Welcome to AmdiVibes.
Picture this, Australia, 1932. The world is in the grip of the Great Depression. For Australian farmers, many of them World War I veterans, things are about to get even weirder. Their new enemy, not economic collapse, but birds. Big, flightless, and surprisingly resilient birds. This is the unbelievable true story of the Great Emu War. After World War I, the Australian government settled thousands of ex-soldiers in Western Australia, encouraging them to take up wheat farming. It was tough land and a tough life. But just as their crops were ready for harvest, a new army arrived, an army of 20,000 emus. Yes, you heard that right, 20,000 emus. These giant birds, migrating inland after their breeding season, discovered a farmer's paradise. Fields of delicious wheat and easy access to water. For them, it was an all-you-can-eat buffet. For the farmers, it was a catastrophe. The emus weren't just eating the crops. They were trampling everything in their path, tearing down fences and creating chaos. Desperate, the veteran farmers, who knew a thing or two about combat, appealed to the government for help. They even sent a delegation to the Minister of Defense, Sir George Pearce. Now, here's where the story takes a legendary turn. The farmers, being ex-soldiers, suggested using machine guns, and Sir George Pearce agreed. He thought it would be great target practice for his soldiers and, hey, emu feathers could make some nice hats for the Australian light horsemen. So, the military was deployed. An actual military operation was launched against a population of birds. Major G.P.W. Meredith of the Royal Australian Artillery was put in charge. He was given to soldiers, Sergeant S. McMurray and Gunner J. O'Halloran, and to Lewis machine guns with 10,000 rounds of ammunition. On paper, it was a total mismatch, a heavily armed military unit versus a bunch of birds. What could possibly go wrong? Well, everything. The first attempt was on November 2nd. The soldiers spotted a flock of about 50 emus. The local settlers tried to herd the birds into an ambush, but the emus were smarter than they looked. They split into small groups and scattered, making them incredibly difficult targets. The machine gunners opened fire, but the birds were just too fast and erratic. After firing a ton of bullets, they had only managed to take down a handful of emus. Major Meredith was stunned. The emus seemed to have some kind of uncanny military tactic. He later noted in his report, and I'm not making this up, if we had a military division with the bullet-carrying capacity of these birds, it would face any army in the world. They can face machine guns with the invulnerability of tanks. The emus were like feathery, two-legged tanks. Even when hit, they would just keep running. The second engagement a couple of days later was an even bigger failure. The soldiers set up an ambush near a local dam, where over 1,000 emus were spotted heading for water. This was their chance. They waited for the birds to get close, then opened fire. But at the first shot, the Lewis gun jammed. Before they could fix it, the 1,000-strong flock had completely vanished into the bush. By the end of the day, they had fired hundreds of rounds and had maybe a dozen dead emus to show for it. The media started to catch on, and the whole operation was becoming a national joke. One headline sarcastically declared Emu War won by emus. Major Meredith and his team were trying everything. They even tried mounting a machine gun on a truck to chase the emus down. It sounds like something out of a Mad Max movie, right? But the chase was a disaster. The truck couldn't keep up with the birds on the rough terrain, and the gunner couldn't get a steady aim. At one point, the truck crashed through a fence and got stuck. The emus, meanwhile, just kept on running, completely unfazed. After nearly a week of this feathered fiasco, Major Meredith was recalled. The first campaign was over. He had used 2,500 rounds of ammunition to kill, at best estimate, maybe 50 to 200 emus. Remember, there were 20,000 of them. It was a humiliating defeat. The emus had won the first round decisively. But the farmers were still desperate. The emu invasion was getting worse. So, they pleaded with the government again. Reluctantly, the military operation was resumed on November 13th, with Major Meredith once again leading the charge. This time, he was determined not to be outsmarted by birds. The military had a bit more success in the second phase. They were more strategic, engaging smaller groups and getting better at ambushing them. Over the next month, they managed to kill nearly 1,000 emus. But it came at a huge cost. They used almost 10,000 rounds of ammunition. That's about 10 bullets for every single emu. Even with this success, it was clear the military solution wasn't working. It was expensive, inefficient, and frankly, embarrassing. On December 10th, the troops were permanently withdrawn. The Great Emu War was officially over, and the emus were the undisputed victors. In the aftermath, the government realized that machine guns weren't the answer. Instead, they turned to a more effective, though less dramatic, solution: a bounty system. The government offered money for every emu killed, which proved far more successful in controlling the population over the next few years. They also built extensive barrier fences to keep the emus out of the farmlands. It was a practical solution to a problem that, for a brief, bizarre moment, was treated like an act of war. So, what can we learn from this strange chapter in history? First, never underestimate your opponent, even if they have feathers and can't fly. The emus demonstrated incredible survival instincts and an uncanny ability to evade a modern military force. Second, it's a hilarious reminder that sometimes the most high-tech, forceful solution is not the right one. A simple fence and a bounty system worked where machine guns failed. The Great Emu War of 1932 remains one of history's most comical military failures. It's a story of man versus nature, where nature won with flying well, running colors. It serves as a perfect example of how reality can sometimes be far stranger and more entertaining than fiction. Australia didn't get nice hats made of emu feathers, but the world got one heck of a story. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this dive into one of history's weirdest conflicts, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more strange tales from the past. Let me know in the comments what other bizarre historical events you'd like me to cover. See you in the next video.